We're poised between utopia and dystopia, right? As we said a moment ago, we have an unimaginable possibility to literally create heaven on earth. We have a level of life that we've never had accessible or available to us before. There's 7.8 billion people, going on 8 billion on the planet. That's an explosion of life, and life is value. We had 500 million people some 150, 200 years ago. That's unimaginable. And at the same time, precisely those forces that created an explosion of life from 500 million to just about 8 billion. That's 8 billion lives. That's 8 billion thriving, pulsing, throbbing, feeling. Wow. At the same time, the very forces that generated that reality also generated a set of structures which will cause reality to self-terminate. And we've described those structures in great depth. And at their core, their generator function, their root cause, is a failed story. A failed story of what? Of identity. Who am I? Where does my story of identity come from? What's it rooted in? My universe story. So we have a failed story of identity. A failed story of identity because it doesn't meet the data. It doesn't meet our own deepest experience, the data of the interior sciences, nor does it meet the objective data of what William James called radical empiricism. It doesn't meet the data of the exterior sciences. So we have a narrow, paltry, insufficient, distorted narrative of identity that comes from a paltry, insufficient, distorted universe story. And out of those two broken narratives, which is the broken narrative of who am I and the broken narrative of where am I, we create existential risk and catastrophic risk, risk to our very existence. What do we call here the second shock of existence? First shock of existence and the dawn of humanity, the death of the individual human being. The second shock of existence, the potential death of humanity. And at this moment, literally poised between utopia and dystopia, there's only one moral imperative, and there's one joy, and there's one ecstatic urgency, and there's one delight, and there's one unimaginably heart-rending and heart-opening and blowing open reality that we can do. We can retell the story. But when we say retell the story, we don't mean an affirmation. We don't mean metaphor. So we actually have to answer based on the best data from the interior sciences, the best information from the interior sciences, and the best information from the exterior sciences. We have to answer anew those two questions. The questions are, where am I? One. And two is, who am I? Right? So if I have a narrow identity, which is based on, as neuroscience points out, and the great traditions knew, repeating again and again the traumas of the past, where I keep repeating the same old mind. I'm stuck in the Groundhog Day movie with Bill Murray, and I can't get out. I keep repeating the same day. And in the Groundhog Day movie, if you remember that movie, who remembers it in the chat box? Remember that movie? In the Groundhog Day movie, they did a freeze frame on that experience of living the same day again and again by actually having it be the same day. But actually, we're living the same day again and again, even if the day looks somewhat different. We're basically doing the same thing. We're lost in the scripts of yesterday, which are scripts of trauma and scripts of contraction and scripts of limiting emotions and scripts of, most important, limited identity. We need to re-narrate the story of who am I and where am I? And when I re-narrate that story, I actually begin to effect a transformation. I generate an emergence. I generate an emergence in myself, and I generate an emergence in reality. And it's the emergence of the new human and the new humanity. And I'm already becoming that new human. We're crossing every day to the other side. So who's willing? That's our intention. Who's willing to cross to the other side? Who's ready to cross to the other side? Who's ready to become today, right? In our practice today, to become the new human and the new humanity, right? To actually participate in the evolution of love, to evolve what we call the source code of consciousness and culture, to participate in the evolution of the source code of consciousness and culture, which is the evolution of love, but not by an abstract and arid process of intellectual analysis, but actually using intellect and heart and mind and body and weaving together the best validated insights of all the great wisdom traditions and actually embodying them. I'm no longer Homo sapien. I'm no longer a separate traumatized self replaying, right, the old stories of yesterday. I'm literally revirginated. And when I'm revirginated, I can be loved open by reality. But not only that, I can love reality open. I can allure reality. And I can actually be able to generate reality. That's the truth. Here's the truth, the simple truth. The simple truth is I'm not a small Homo sapien. I'm actually Homo Amor. And Homo Amor means that it all lives in me. That literally I live in an intimate universe that's interconnected at every level, all the way up and all the way down. And I share identity with that limited universe. And that entire limited universe lives in me. That's the truth. I am quite literally an incarnation, a personal incarnation of the universe in person. I'm a personal incarnation of divinity in person. I'm a personal incarnation of the Tao in person. And therefore, I'm a creator. Creation's not a one-time event that happened way back when, and we're the passive recipients, right, of a kind of universal causation in which we have no effect. It's not a cause and effect world. It's a world in which we cause the effect. That's what it means to be Homo Amor. And it means that actually I am cause. I'm not only acted upon, I'm not only object buffeted around, but I am subject. So who's here today prepared to say, I am subject? I'm no longer merely Homo sapien. I'm no longer merely Homo sapien, right? I am subject, right? I am cause of reality. I can actually transcend. I can end the trance and step into, right, a new world and generate that new world. And if all of us step into Homo Amor, if all of us cross over to the other side together, if all of us step into unique self and actually live as irreducible unique expressions, unique self, not my Myers-Briggs test, but me as a unique expression of the entire field of eros and desire, and we join hands together. Let's hold hands, friends. Let's hold hands. Can we hold hands? Let's hold hands. Let's circle the globe holding hands. Let's breathe together because we're one breath. We hold hands together, then we begin to literally generate this next step of the self-actualizing cosmos, the next step of the self-organizing universe. We begin to awaken in love, right? We begin to literally generate a planetary awakening in love through unique self-symphonies. That's our intention. That's where we are. And it's the only choice we have, my friends. The only choice. I remember my dad used to tell me, right, about the 67 war in Israel, which is a strange and terrible war, which took 6 days, right? And Israel was surrounded by, 10 states that all, recited Nazi propaganda, right? Literally, and said, we're going to destroy the state and finish the work of the Holocaust. It's a terrible moment. And thank God there's been new possible evolutions, right, in the Arab world. And we're not in 1967, but that was a terrible moment. And I said to my dad, and I was, 5 years old or something. And I said, right, how did Israel win? And he said they had no choice. It was an existential risk. He just said they had no choice. I'm adding, it was an existential risk. We have no choice, friends. There's 2 choices today, love or die. But not just love in a small, love meaning become love in person and know the physics of it and know the science of it and know its truth. And let's see if we can do this. Can we do this, friends? Let's take a look at the code. This week's evolutionary code. And what I want to do is I want to read the code with you, and then I'm going to actually turn off for a second at a couple of, somewhere in between, I'm going to turn off my video and do a meditation with you right on this code. Let's take a look at this code. Here's the code, this week's code. Your unique self is an expression of the larger field of love, intelligence, and love beauty that is the interior face of the cosmos. That's such a big sentence. We can't, right? I mean, your unique self, right, is an expression of the larger field of love, intelligence, and love beauty that is the interior face of the cosmos. We call that dimension of reality, right, the field, the seamless code of the universe, right? And the code of the universe is seamless but not featureless. And your unique self is the unique feature of that seamless code of the universe, your irreducible incarnation of that unique field. Using the name true self, we can speak of, right, the field, and the field of true self generates unique self. So now what does all that mean? And we said today in the mailing, right, that we said we're going to talk about the 5 selves today. So we're not going to talk about all of them, but we're going to focus on 2 or 3 of them. So the 5 selves, we've been doing the 5 selves for, 11 years. This dharma of the 5 selves. And the first self is the emergence of self, of an experience of self. Is when I move from pre-personal to self, and I individuate. Right? Margaret Mallor called it separation individuation. That's the emergence of separate self, and it's a blessing. It's a beautiful blessing. I have a sense of agency, a sense of identity, right? Here I am, right? This is me, right? I can show up, and I've got a sense that I've got a unique destiny, and I begin to actually realize I'm not my mother, and I'm not my surroundings, and I'm in a relationship with them in some way. So there's some distinction, some individuation. That's separate self. The shadow of separate self is, I think that's all I am, right? And that's the shadow of this notion of individuating, right? I think I'm actually ontologically, genuinely separate from the larger field in a fundamental way. That feeling, that sense of aloneness, right? That sense of contraction, that's what we call, in the negative sense, the ego. The healthy ego is the healthy, integrated sense of self. But the ego in its shadow form is a contraction, right? It's a coiling of infinity into a finite point, and then that finite point dissociates from the larger field of infinity. So in that dissociation, right, in this attention fixation on the contraction, where I think that's all I am, that's the source of pain, that's the source of suffering. And if I'm a materialist contraction, if my attention is stuck on that material contraction, then I keep looping again and again. I keep looping through yesterday and looping through the old traumas, and I can never get out of them. And that's called false self, right? False self is all the distorted forms of separate self, which we're not going to talk about today. The beginning of the transformation, right, is to actually give a better answer, a more factual answer, a more accurate answer, an honest answer, a true answer, the question of who are you? And the only way to respond to existential risk, which is sourced in a broken answer to that question, out of which comes a broken story, right? A win-lose metric story, right? A success story governed by win-lose metrics that drives extraction models and exponential growth curves that self-terminate. The only way to respond is to actually answer the question of who are you in a more accurate way. Now, stay close, and I'm going to start a meditation in a couple of minutes, okay? We say that actually the nature of reality, and let's step into this meditation, okay? Let's see if we can access in this moment, right, the answer to the question of who are you? Who are you? Is it actually true that you're a separate self? And we know that that's not true because we know that I yearn to move beyond myself. We know that if I live on an island by myself, even though I have all of my needs taken care of, I'm fundamentally devastated. We know that I yearn for contact. I yearn for interiority to touch interiority. I yearn to create. We know actually, based on the deepest realization of the interior sciences and the exterior sciences, that I'm not separate self, that I'm actually true self. And when I really understand the realization of true self, I awaken to the realization of unique self. And when I really understand the realization of unique self, I awaken to evolutionary unique self. So let's understand, what do we mean by true self? The way true self is usually understood, my friends, and stay close, and let's stay close together now. It's usually understood as I go inside and I meditate on my inner nature and I realize, oh, I have a hand, but I'm not my hand. Okay, I have a hand, so I'm an I that has a hand. Beautiful. And then I realize I have emotions, but I'm not my emotions because I have emotions. And then I realize I have thoughts, but I'm not my thoughts because I am having thoughts. So who am I? I am the I that's aware of my emotions. I'm the I that's aware of my body. I'm the I that's aware of my thoughts. I'm aware of my awareness. And that's considered in some deep way the summa bonum of meditation. And that's important. It's important to know that the essence of who I am is consciousness, right? Is awareness, because then I realize the power of my intention. But it's insufficient. That's just the beginning of true self. You see, when we define anything, my friends, what is something made up of? Something's made up of something that's deeper than its parts. The parts come together and there's a synergy. And a synergy means that there's a new whole greater than the sum of its parts. You can't define it in terms of the sum of its parts. You can't even define it in terms of the sum of its qualities. There's a new wholeness, right, that is actually generated. Okay, now let's try and find the truth of this. Let's try and feel this. Right? There's actually this new wholeness means that there's an intimacy between the parts, and the parts share identity. So the subatomic molecules, the subatomic, right? Excuse me, not molecules, the subatomic particles come together and they form an atom. And the atom is a new identity. It's a shared identity. There's mutuality of pathos when it's healthy. All the parts can feel each other. There's mutuality of recognition. All the parts recognize each other. And there's mutuality of purpose. All the parts move together towards a shared destiny. And let's feel this even deeper. Let's understand this even deeper. So let's ask a question. For example, this is going to take us into what true self means and into what unique self means. And in this guided meditative moment, but this is an analytic meditation, what my friend the Dalai Lama called an analytic meditation, which we go inside to contemplate the true nature of reality. So if I asked you, do atoms exist? And are atoms real? Well, yes and no. Right? What does exist mean? What does it mean to be real? So if you frame it, right, in a kind of classical, limited scientific way, you'd say, well, of course atoms are real. It's a silly question. Well, why are atoms real? Well, because it has different dimensions, different properties, right? And those different properties allow us predictivity, if we can make up a word, right? They allow us to predict, right? To know what the atom's going to do, right? An atom has protein, right? Proton radius. An atom has atomic radius. An atom has molecular properties. But actually, when those properties come together, they're greater than the sum of the parts. They share an identity, but that's not the entire identity of an atom. That's not what an atom is by itself. An atom, if that's what an atom was, an atom would not exist. An atom would not be real. There's actually something else that defines an atom. There's actually a wider field, because actually the atom also has a larger context, which is part of the atom's identity. So for example, there's no atom without the Higgs field. There's no atom without the electromagnetic field. There's no atom without the fine structure constant, or without the strong force, or without gluons. Without all those fields, there's literally no existence. There's no reality to the atom. And we could add, and almost ad infinitum, to those dimensions that seem to be outside the identity of the atom. And I realize actually without them, there's no atom. Wow. So let's begin to understand what we're saying. If I actually begin to understand that the whole universe gives rise to an atom, I really begin to understand that ontologically, the atom is inseparable from this wider field, right? Then I can say that the atom's real. Right? I need to actually understand that there's no way to approach the identity of the atom without the Higgs field, without the electromagnetic field, without the nature of the subject that's perceiving the object of the atom. And then I begin to understand what Einstein meant when he said it's an optical delusion to believe that there are separate things at all. I begin to understand, right, that actually to understand anything, you have to literally start with understanding everything. I begin to understand what Master Dogen meant when he said enlightenment is intimacy with all things. And I begin to understand what we mean in our first principles and first values when we say that actually intimacy is not just a feeling. Intimacy means something. Intimacy actually means shared identity with the larger field. So let's feel this for a second. Let's feel this in relationship to myself. And I begin to actually understand something which is wildly beautiful and insanely profound. I cannot actually talk about myself in a limited way. Yes, there's a boundary of my self-organizing experience. There's something to be said, right, for my personhood. But my personhood includes a much wider field of identity. Yes, there's a certain genetics that lives in me. And yes, there's also this wider field of bacteria, right, and viral movements coursing through me and molecules coming from plants and all the stuff that's outside of me, right? All that stuff outside of my self-organizing boundary is also me. So actually, if I go into my body, I realize I've got organs and I've got organ systems, and then I've got tissues, and I've got cells, and then I've got molecules, and I've got atoms, and I've got subatomic particles. And I realize all of that and all the fields that live in them are part of the very definition of who I am. And then from the interior perspective, all the various movements of spirit, all the various movements of desire, all the various allurements, all the various configurations of the divine fields, all of the various fields of consciousness, all of that actually is part of my identity. If I actually understand that my identity goes down to the very foundation of reality itself beneath quantum mechanics, and I can't speak of self without that. And at the same time, I understand that there's quantum phenomena interacting to create the emergent property of classicality around the level of atoms, right, that generate me. And that there's actually a profound ontic emergence all the way up and all the way down, and none of me and none of thee exists independently of all these top-down forces and all of these bottom-up forces. And without all of it, I literally, quite literally, would not exist. So I am, if I actually understand the true nature of myself, I understand that I'm not merely a separate self, I am true self. And true self means that I am a unique interactivity in the seamless code of the universe. I'm not just true self. It's not just a field of interconnectivity. I'm a unique node. I'm a unique feature, right? The seamless code of the universe is seamless, but not featureless, right? There's a standing wave and there's nodes in that standing wave. And I'm a holon. I'm a part that's part of a larger whole, that's part of a larger whole, that's part of a larger whole. And to actually realize that I'm part of this larger field of interconnectivity and intimacy that's defined by the experience of allurement and desire, to understand that actually I'm not just in the field of intimacy and desire, but I'm a unique node in that field, that I actually uniquely stand at the very center of that field, that there's not one center, but there are multiple centers in mathematical cosmology today. And I am one of those multiple centers. And I'm not just affected by the universal causation which generates me, but I am cause. That's what it means to be unique self. It means that my unique node in the middle of that field is generative and free and cause. All of the fields acting on me all the way up and all the way down that hold me, that are part of my identity, that seem to cause me and that do cause me, are actually also moved by my central node in the midst of it all, which is my irreducible uniqueness. And my irreducible uniqueness is cause. So I'm both generated by the entire cause and effect, which is part of my very profound, intimate identity, and I cause the effect. I am literally cause of reality. And to actually be unique self is to know that I'm not just an object affected by cause and effect, but I am subject, which is cause. To be unique self is to know that I'm the irreducibly unique cause of all of reality, and that actually I am not just unique self, I'm evolutionary unique self, that the entire process of evolution literally moves through me, that I am transcending not my ego, that's not the focus. I'm actually aligning with the evolutionary impulse, which is the unique configuration of intimacy, eros, and desire that lives in me, as me, and through me, which causes reality. And in that precise sense, I am not merely created, but I am the creator. I am not merely caused, but I am cause, right? That is the new mind that's birthed in me in every day, in every moment. And I have but one question which I ask. There's one question, which is the ultimate unique self-practice. And the question is, what does reality need me to cause in the very next moment? I am true self. I am part of the field. The field moves in me. I am not an isolated or discrete atom. I am made up of trillions and trillions of atoms, which are held by the Higgs field and which are held by the electromagnetic field, and which are held right in the field of the gluon, and which are held by right all of those properties, the electromagnetic field, and all of the quantum reality, all the way up and all the way down, and all of the biosphere generated by the quantum reality. All of that lives in me. All of evolution quite literally lives inside of me. And the divine voice turns to me and says, Naaseh Adam, let us, you and me together, create reality in our image. I literally become divine. I literally become Metatron. And this is where the reality of the interior sciences meets the reality of the exterior sciences. And we realize it's all one. There's no separation. There's no split. And anything less will leave me devastated, pained, contracted. And it's the pain of my clothes not fitting. It's the pain of experiencing myself coiled and contracted so much smaller than I am. The great truth of cosmos, my friends, is who we really are. And when I actually know who I am, and I cry out, here I am, I'm ready to be cause. And I link hands with other unique selves, and we join together, and we create and generate the next stage of the self-actualizing cosmos, the next level of the self-organizing universe. Then we unleash a cascading force of love, of eros, unlike any of the top-down command and control systems ever could have dreamed of. And that's how we respond to existential risk, not just by avoiding dystopia, but by becoming utopia in person ourselves. Homo sapien becomes Homo Amor. That's true. That's real. It's the most accurate understanding of cosmos we have. That is the way of the heart, the one heart, right? The one love that beats uniquely in each one of us, allowing each one of us to be cause of reality.